timeline. Johanna Maria Neuman. Okay, 1928. Born Johanna Maria Dykstra, eldest child of Bertha Dykstra, nee Donk, and Abraham Jan Dykstra. Yoka's father was an engineer at the tin mine in Sinket, where Yoka was born, and later on Bilaton, both islands off the coast of Sumatra in Dutch colonial Indonesia. Bertha was a bit of an artist and had little to do besides entertaining and going shopping to Singapore. The household had up to 14 Indonesian servants or babu, including the nonni or nanny. Yoka's siblings were Audrey, who died 2 days after Yoka, Mareka, who died in 2014, and Brum, born 10 years later than Yoka and still very much alive.
That's me in the baby cot, and that's me in stoeiend, it says, of puppy's arm. That is my father holding me, and I'm having a fun time there. Everything is round about Yoka. Mama Beb tries to keep her under control, which is impossible. My father's pride and joy, his motorbike. My father called it het motorengeltje, the little angel of the motorbike. And here he is again, Bram and Yoka met the Harley Davidson in the garden. And that's me on the beach in Indonesia, and that's the beach that I can't get to ever again. Because the island is now full of pirates. This is a school play at a school in Singap. Of Biliton actually. And this is me, that one, looking miserable. And that's Adrie. And that's Marijke. She's my favorite teacher. So I loved her, absolutely adored her. And that is our swimming pool. Look at how big it is. Enormous. Ginormous. And my father taught me to swim by throwing me into the pool and then diving in after me. This is what women did in Indonesia, just sit and have coffee and have the children around you while the husband was away working somewhere.
Yep. 1937, as Yoka suffered from the Indonesian heat, she was sent to Holland to live with her maternal grandparents in The Hague. In the care of another Dutch family, she sailed through the Suez Canal and into her first winter. 1940, Yoka's mother and siblings arrived in Holland. Later that year, Holland was occupied by the German army, and bombs, tank traps, and the underground became the new language of the war. 1942, Yoka's father was interred by the Japanese in Indonesia. 1943, because their house in The Hague was requisitioned to build a tank trap, the grandparents went to Arnhem, and Yoka and her mother and siblings were sent to Hengelo, an industrial town near the border with Germany. This area was bombed heavily by the British and Americans. 1944, at 16, during the Hunger War, Yoka was sent to the Home Economic School in Amsterdam to learn how to be a lady and cook with practically nothing. Later that year, she was back in Hengelo, and there were stories of a horrifying trip in the back of a truck, stealing coal and being shot at and taking cover under a dead horse or cow. It sort of varies a little bit. Distributing underground newspapers, hiding people in the attic, trading Omi's clothes for butter, and avoiding the German soup with maggots in it. 1945, Hengelo was liberated by the English and then occupied and fed by the Canadian soldiers. Her first boyfriend was Charles Blackburn, a Canadian who gave her his hat badge. Yoka's father had returned to Holland, and she barely recognised him at the railway station due to malnutrition, beatings and horrific treatment he had endured over 3 years in the Japanese prisoner of war camps.
told me that you did ice skating, and I wanted to know a bit more about when you started and what you did.
Well, of course, Holland is a lot colder in winter than it is here in winter. And we really, at that time, when I was, say, about 13, 14, 15 and 16, we had some pretty ferocious winters. And one of those winters that was so, the ice on the canals was strong enough for people to go and skate. And that's when I went skating. This was an identification booklet. It says here my name and my first name and my birth name and where I was born, etc. And if you didn't have this with you, you could be shot on sight, basically. And this is a gymnasiumklasse. It's very difficult to explain. It's sort of Latin school. 1943, which was my one and only venture into classical education. I learned some Latin and some Greek. In Hengelo, where we had been, Hengelo Overijssel, where we had been evacuated to. When Omi sent me to the huishoudschool again, I'd had a short period in 1944 as well, but that was during the war, and I had to leave because the huishoudschool didn't have any things to cook with or to clean with or anything like that at all, even though I actually learned how to fold a sheet there at the time. I remember that vividly. Yes, because I didn't know the word for courting at the time. So I put down lovemaking. First step is getting to know each other, and the next one is an almost last step.
You were girls pretending to be Canadian soldiers?
Yes, yes.
So you had a thing for Canadian soldiers?
Of course, because they were our liberators. And this is one of the steps in it. There was all this seduction by cigarette. Kiplan 11 was where Opa and Oma had bought a house. They actually had bought it before the war, just before the war, and then had to leave when the Germans threw everybody out of that area because it was too close to the tank trap that they had built. So after the war they had to put in a special request to ask if it was okay for them to go back to their own house. And we moved in with them.
Oh, so you got back your old house?
Yes, that's me, that is Adrie, and that's Marijke. I put here small Bram and big Bram because my father came back from Indonesia. He was just a stranger to us, of course, because he'd been away all this time. I mean, he'd been away since 1939. After everybody had said, hello, how are you, and how wonderful to have you back, and so forth, out of the train that was bringing all the people from the camps back into civilization. There was just one man left on this platform, and I went up to him and I said, are you my father? Literally. And he said, oh, you must be Yoka. So, and then Marijke came as well. So it was a family reunion on the platform. And he'd been in the camps in Indonesia. And here's Brammetje again, with his big sister.
(1947 to 53). Over these 5 years she worked in England as an au pair and trained at Hatchard's bookshop in London, with 2 stints in a bookshop in Holland and 1 in Leiden. 1953. Secretary to Professor Van Dishoek at an ear, nose and throat clinic at Leiden. She met Hans Neuman, who partway through his medical school happened to get a job at the same ear, nose and throat clinic. Hans and many other members of his family had also been interned by the Japanese in prisoner war camps in Indonesia. 1955. Yoka's father dies. Hans and Yoka are engaged. She works at various secretarial jobs while Hans worked at other assistance jobs as a film operator. 1956. Hans and Yoka marry and move into their own tiny flat in Babenstraat 16 in The Hague. Hans had numerous pets, including turtles, parrots, fish, gerbils, which filled up the flat. Next pet, yes, next pet is 1960, Fieker was born. Hans, as a medical student, attended the birth and was responsible for removing the cord from around her neck. 1961 to January 1962, the three Neumans immigrated to New Zealand on the Waterman, sailing via Curacao. Hans's family was there, and the Panama Canal in Tahiti. Landed in Wellington where Marika and her Kiwi husband, Alan, were living. Hans's brother Eric and his wife Yet had immigrated in 1951, travelling to Dunedin with the plan that Hans could attend medical school and were billeted by the Du Bois family in Sawyers Bay. Later moving to a flat in the gardens, Hans got work as a psychiatric assistant at the Seacliff Hospital, often coming home on days off every second weekend. Here she developed her lifelong love of the Dunedin Botanical Gardens and Woodhall. 1962, Eric born, as Yoka is always happy to tell us, he was a true New Zealand baby.
Hans, his mother, and Erik, and Ineke, and Bobby, the dog.
Yeah, harrowing times.
Well, I would like the opportunity to ask Uncle Eric about when he first met Yoka Neuman. Oh, before she was Yoka Neuman?
Yeah.
Or was she already Yoka Neuman when you met her?
No, she was Yoka Dijkstra.
Dijkstra, yes.
Yeah? And where was that?
A little redhead.
Oh, really?
Up the steps.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
And was she already on Hans's arm at that point?
Oh, yeah.
And that was in the Court Heiligenstraat.
All right.
In the court.
That was where you were living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They met each other in Leiden, right? In the laboratory.
They met in the lavatory in Leiden.
When Hans was doing nystagmus.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
So what? He put you
Experiment.
on a chair and turned you around?
That's right. I was the professor's secretary, so...
You got spun around
and turned you around.
and made her dizzy.
She's been dizzy ever since.
It's got a lot to answer for that.
But the film camera was very, very much something new. And that's me looking or pointing out some sort of significant botanical feature. Yeah, more botanical features.
Okay, well this will be July 1960.
This was definitely July 1960. About 8 hours old or something, if that. Because it's all so unbelievably new and wonderful. Well, no, I just wanted to emigrate. And Hans wanted to go to somewhere nice and hot. And he certainly didn't arrive in something nice and hot. He would have been far happier in Auckland, I think. But I wouldn't have been.
So what made you decide on Dunedin?
Medical school. That was the only place then. This in Curacao, yes, as well. Very definitely. Where Ineke was and Peter. Mama and the glasses with the upward tilt.
Horn rims.
Yeah, the horn rims. And,
So how long did you live in Sawyers Bay?
about 2 weeks.
Right.
not very long, and after that we found the place in, in
Gardens.
at the gardens.
Yeah.
Eric, yes, and Eric is about a year there. Papa was working, of course, yes, and he only came home occasionally, once every fortnight, a weekend or something. He was working in Seacliff then, and basically I was with the kids and used to go for walks in the gardens a lot.
(1964), Port Number 1, Station Road, Warrington. John was born. A huge involvement in whitetail and Warrington Play Centres in the community. There were many other Dutch families in the area, many of whom worked at Seacliff, Cherry Farm and Hurricane Psychiatric Hospitals. 1965 onwards, a whirl of caring for kids, Warrington School, cooked lunches, home renovations, garden, birthday parties, Christmas presents from overseas and visits from relatives, including her mother, Bertha, now known as Omi. 1970s, Country Women's Institute, patchwork blankets, oven mitts and moo-moos. Hunts met David Gallop, a patient at Orokonui, and brings him home to cut the hedges and have a taste of family life. David stayed part of Yoka's life until he died in 2012.
That's in the Trotter's Gorge.
And that's Johnny in the background there.
Definitely. I think probably about 8 months or whatever.
So were we having a little barbecue there? Were we?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a great view of our car coming up.
Yeah.
Your Pontiac.
Yeah.
That was your first car.
That was definitely our first car, and only one for a while.
We used it for quite a few driving trips.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Number 1 Station Road.
Number 1 Station Road and the steps. At that time, church was extremely important to me because that was the only social contact. There was no play centre yet.
So it must have been, when you moved to Warrington, it must have been fairly important to know those other Dutch people and stuff?
Yes. What a different sort of person I am, hey?
When did you start making mayonnaise?
In Warrington. I started making mayonnaise, can you believe it, with a fork, with 2 forks. I didn't have a machine then, and I started to make it with 2 forks and whipping. And I didn't make so many of them at that time at all.
So where did you get the recipe?
I don't really know. I must have read it somewhere in one of the, the New Zealand Women's Weekly or something. But it just evolved. I enjoyed making it, and I changed it a bit and so forth. And I'll give you the recipe if you like.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.